Great Britain is in crisis. The new wave of infections is affecting countless industries. The government does not want to admit that many problems are due to Brexit. For a long time, the British supermarkets were able to hide their misery. For months, pasta, canned soups, avocados or honey were pushed onto the shelf so skillfully that it wasn't even noticeable how meager the selection really was. It is no longer possible because now the employees are also missing. So there's no one who has time to sort the meager range of goods into Potemkin villages in a land of milk and honey. Suddenly, it is noticeable that several types of pasta are no longer available. The selection of canned soup has been drastically reduced. There's no salad besides the avocados, and only one brand of honey is sold. Frustrated customers post the empty shelves of Tesco, Asda, Sainsbury's or Co-op on Twitter. The traders are experiencing a summer in the crisis between Brexit suffering and Corona escalation. By no means the only industry facing major problems. At first sight, the blame is the extent of virus transmission in the UK, which has increased so dramatically. According to the Office for National Statistics, every 75th person in England is now infected with a highly contagious Delta variant. The British warning app sounds an alarm if someone has been around a person who has tested positive for at least, or have been around for at least 15 minutes. More and more people are pinging their cell phones. In the past week, more than 600,000 people were asked to stay at home. 10 days of self-isolation, regardless of whether they are office workers, train drivers, nurses, cooks, doctors, or tanker truck drivers. And the consequences? Thousands of important employees are missing in many industries. In some cases, 10% of the workforce in the automotive industry and almost 20% of the workforce in the Metropolitan Police in London. For many, a warning from the app also means paid free time. The incentive to log off with the employer is accordingly great. The British government has no choice but to exempt employees in numerous professions from the obligation to quarantine if there is a risk of infection. The list of special permits is getting longer and longer. It now comprises 24 industries whose companies are allowed to exempt particularly important employees from quarantine if they are fully vaccinated and undergo a quick test every day. Above all, this includes staff in the health sector, utilities, food manufacturing, transportation, chemical industry, border guards, and the local city authorities. Up to 2,000 new test centers are to be set up for the rapid tests, but they are not set up yet. But it wouldn't have been any other way. The sudden opening of the country should actually stimulate the economy. Instead, the pingdemic, as the shortage of staff in Great Britain is called, has the opposite effect. In London, 2 lines of the subway could temporarily no longer run. Trains from 7 railway companies operate with a reduced timetable. Companies need to shorten production times. In some places, the garbage can hardly be picked up. Bars and restaurants have to close earlier or no longer offer lunch. Deliveries are delayed, logistics get mixed up. The Red Funnel Ferry now runs limited service from Southampton to the Isle of Wight. The chairman of the British Meat Processors Association, Nick Allen, warned last week, "You can see it now in shops and restaurants. Everyone is having trouble getting the product to market." At the weekend, the criticism from companies was that the government exception conditions were announced too late and would only cause more chaos. The approval process is too complicated. First, the HR departments have to read through a 3,500-word manual only to find out that special approvals are only available upon written invitation from the government. What Prime Minister Boris Johnson wanted to celebrate last Monday by lifting the restrictions as Freedom Day is now turning out to be a logistical nightmare. Economy Minister Kwasi Kwarteng admitted that he was watching the pandemic with concern. But it is not just pandemic that, despite the opening, is slowing the UK economy while growth in the EU is picking up again. There have been delivery bottlenecks since the beginning of the year. And much of what is now being pushed onto the renewed wave of infections is actually a consequence of Brexit. For example, the painful lack of staff. In numerous industries, there is a lack of continental European employees who otherwise worked in the hotel and restaurant trade, agriculture, the meat industry, slaughterhouses, warehouses, and shops. During the pandemic, many returned to their homeland and are not coming back. Also, because they no longer receive a visa under the new immigration law. Many do not meet the qualification standards or income requirements. As long as the restaurants were closed and large parts of the economy were on the back burner in London, not in London, but lockdown, the labor shortage was of little consequence. Now, it can be seen everywhere. For example, the UK lacks around 100,000 truck drivers, according to the Road Haulage Association. The profession is not popular. Many older people have stopped, but there's also an important reason. Many haulage companies are not willing to pay the drivers the long waiting times for border clearance. So they should stand in line for hours without pay, because after Brexit, customs papers and certificates of origin are required, which of course are checked. Not every driver is paid as well as we are, say Paul and Jack, two Dutchmen who are on the ferry from Rotterdam to Harwich for the Nauvens freight forwarder. They were asked by a German media company. Every day they drive their articulated lorries across the canal delivering shoes to the UK. Nauvens pay well. They have to be in Harwich for at least an hour, sometimes 6. But we get paid for our work from the moment we leave our house until we return. That's great, they say. However, many haulage companies only paid the drivers an hour to wait at the border. Most did not go along with it. Especially many Eastern Europeans had decided to only drive in the EU and no longer across the Sleeve Channel, as we call it. This in turn drives up the prices of the freight forwarders. British companies importing from the EU moan about the expensive transportation and longer delivery times. Fresh produce from the EU often arrives so late that it can no longer be put on supermarket shelves. However, it doesn't just depend on the drivers. Many companies that used to deliver to Great Britain have now withdrawn or only cover a limited range of products. The reason? It's not worth it. The EU companies have to prepare invoices with customs tariffs numbers for each individual product in the hold. There is too much work for many companies, especially since their existing software is often not designed for it. What's more, for deliveries to Great Britain, you have to submit declarations of origin, so that the British importer does not have to pay customs duties. This is also special work that is otherwise not required in trade within the EU. It will get even worse if, in a few months' time, the UK also has to check health certificates in trade in animal products and food at the border. Many European companies do not want to go along with this. And British importers are cutting down the variety of products for imports. So, the corona situation is not the reason why people are standing in front of empty shelves. The government does not want to say that openly, however, unless it concerns the delivery problems between Great Britain and Northern Ireland. For Johnson and his Brexit minister David Frost, they are the reason to want to renegotiate the Northern Ireland Protocol, which the EU has rejected. In fact, however, Brexit is creating difficulties in trade at all borders. The British public will probably only realize this when the great wave of infections is over and the country is actually supposed to return to normal. The number of people newly infected every day has already fallen from 60,000 to just under 25,000, but so that shouldn't be long now, although experts expect it to rise again, but we will see. But when this is over, Brexit will show its face and everyone will see it. I'll see you in my next video. Auf Wiedersehen.